Well, of course, I want to say happy birthday for 10 years. I want to say that the Mori Art Museum established itself as a museum of international importance in 1 decade, and that is a really great achievement. There are very few museums that have done that, and I think what's particularly important is that it represents a voice in the international art world coming from Asia. We've not previously had a museum which could speak with such authority from Asia, and at a time when the whole art world is looking outside of Northwest Europe, outside of North America, even outside Latin America and other areas that have traditionally been the focus, to have this strong voice coming from Asia has been very important. I think that the challenge for the Mori Art Museum over the next decade is, on the one hand, to continue to build the strength of its voice. That means probably becoming an institution that is even more concerned with research and investigating new areas. But it probably also means an organization which is really beginning to examine in different ways the ideas behind the principal idea of Mr. Mori, which was to examine the relationship between art and life. So for the Mori Art Museum to be looking at the whole question of how does art affect our lives? In what way are our lives going to develop in the 21st century? How do we deal with new technologies? How do we deal with the challenges of climate change? How do artists make a contribution to this? How do architects shape our cities? These are the kinds of questions that I think the Mori Museum will want to address over the next decade, and I think they will do so from a very interesting viewpoint. Of course, in 2020, Tokyo will be hosting the Olympic Games, and this provides another platform on which the Mori Art Museum, I think, can be a very effective voice. Out of Doubt is clearly a very important exhibition and slightly different from previous versions of Roppongi Crossing. I think there are 2 significant changes. The first, of course, is that it involves artists who have in some way a Japanese heritage or who grew up here and moved away. And it therefore begins to tell us that Japan and Japanese artists are an important force in the world at large and not just within Japan. So this is an important development. The second, of course, is that for the first time there was a curatorial voice coming from outside of Japan. And at a time when more and more museums are thinking about what does it mean to make art in Asia, to have a different curatorial voice alongside the voice of the museum itself, I think is a very positive move. So I think in this exhibition you see a lot of very exciting work. I certainly found some artists that I didn't know before. I saw new work by artists that I did know, and to me it was a very, very engaging show, dealing with some of the big questions about how do we live in cities, how do we conduct ourselves in the beginning of the 21st century.